Get many more people coming, so we'll start planning for 7 o'clock and they have to finish.
Got some instructions. Right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Taki Suleiman. I'm the Chief Executive of Argyll and Bute Third Sector Interface. There are 2 organisations jointly hosting this Hustings today. Time for Change are here as well, and Lucy will introduce who they are and what they do. It's almost 7 o'clock, so I'm just going to run through a few words of introduction. The TSI, the Third Sector Interface for Argyll and Bute, we support third sector organisations. We represent the third sector at key bodies and groups, both in the council and in the NHS and nationally. And we're really, really proud to be hosting the Hustings today. As a self-confessed politics geek, I really find Hustings exciting. This is an opportunity for you all to... someone laughing at me already. You see, self-confessed politics geek. It's a very unusual form of behaviour. But us geeks realise that, for instance, the Scottish Government spends 69.4 billion of your money. And that's really, really important that we have democracy around that. And that's why it's so good we've got 6 of the 7 candidates here today. I'll just quickly run through them all. We have Jackie Bailey from Scottish Labour. Wave for everybody. We have Linda McEwen from the Trade Union and Socialist Coalition. We have Andrew Muir, who's an independent. We have David Smith from Reform UK. We have Sophie Traynor from the SNP. And we have Gary Mulvaney from the Scottish Conservatives. So thank them all, obviously, for taking the time out from their busy campaigning schedule. We've obviously got the elections on the 7th of May, so many people will have already made their minds up. But the purposes of today really is to try to draw some distinctions between their relative positions. And they do have very different positions on a number of core questions for all of us. Many of you will be volunteers, trustees, staff of voluntary organisations, members of the public, but you will all have an interest that matters most to you. And I'm hoping that you will find a candidate here today that will appeal to all of you. As I said, the importance of elections, 69.4 billion or so pounds, 67.9 billion, I got that wrong, misquoted me. We have a range of global issues affecting our cost of living. We also have young people who can vote at the age of 16. So it's a really, really important opportunity for us to change the way our country is run, make it fit for the future, so on and so forth. All the parties have now published their manifestos, and I'm hoping they will give a series of highlights. In terms of the way that today will run, each candidate will be asked to speak for 3 minutes, and they've been asked to both set out who they are, a little bit about their party, and a little bit about what they will do for the community and third sector in the Dumbarton constituency. Then we've got a series of questions that have been pre-submitted by some of you. I hope you're all in the room today. If not, the chair will then posit the question. And the guys here have got a really tricky task. They've got a minute to answer all of the questions. And because we're going to be thrown out at 8:30 p.m, bang on the dot, they're going to have to be very, very tight. We've held 3, this is the third in a series of 3 hustings. The other 2 on the other side of Argyll. Don't boo. We had 5 candidates at one and 4 at the other. So managing with 6 will be quite tricky for the chair. So I'm hoping...
I'm strict.
You will be strict. I've done the introductions, a little bit about we're live streaming today. So if you fancy going back and say, did they really say that? You can check and look at the live stream. But it does mean that I'm going to ask that everybody behaves with the proper standards of public decency and treat everybody, including the candidates, with the utmost respect, and they will do the same with you. And when you're being called with your question, again, try to frame it to all of them, not just one candidate, and to remember that these are Scottish Government, Scottish Parliament elections, not the local council and not Westminster, although there are some issues, of course, that cut across all of those areas, and we will have some questions about those. So a little bit about the importance of elections for our sector. The third sector is under real pressure. We know that from the recent round of proposals, savings proposals for the local NHS board. We know that with the settlement for councils. We know that nationally. We know that many countries across the world are also experiencing extreme stress financially to fund their public services. So it's a really, really tricky time. But we're interested in how we can be a resilient community. We're interested in how we can support each other. We're interested also, particularly as a third sector interface, and there's one for each council area of Scotland, we're particularly interested in how we can divert high cost spend towards local service delivery models so that it's better for the individual, it's better for our communities, and it means that we don't have such expensive public services which have risk having poorer outcomes if people have services accessed a little bit later. So we've got, as I say, a TSI Scotland manifesto, which I will send each of you in a link so that you can read that at your leisure. I won't go on too much more. I was going to talk about key dates at the other elections, but they've all passed. Turnout is allegedly going to be quite low at this election. So the fact that you're all here means that you're all motivated, but you'll know people who are not, and it's really, really important that we advocate for our democratic process. So again, this event is a celebration of that process. I think we might just have enough time to appoint a proxy. So if you want a proxy vote and you can't attend the elections, I think you've got until midnight today to apply for a proxy vote instead. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Lucy Hollingworth. But before I do, we're not having a fire alarm, because I've forgotten that already. We're not having a fire alarm, so if there is one, we head straight out that way. The toilets are over there to the left, on my left. And yes, Lucy Hollingworth, over to you. Take it away.
Jackie.
Oh, yes, sorry, I keep forgetting stuff. One of my teams just reminded me. We will be taking photographs, and Lucy will be using her trusty phone there. So if you don't want to be photographed, please just indicate to Lucy. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Taki, and welcome everybody to the Helensburgh Hustings. Just a little bit about me. As Taki says, I'm called Lucy Hollingworth. I'm an academic, so I work for a university, and my university is the Open University in Scotland, so I'm interested in education. I'm also a citizen scientist with an interest in plants, habitats, environment, biodiversity, that kind of thing. And I do survey work for the Botanical Society, which has just started, and I'll be doing that all summer. I've been in Time for Change since 2020, both as a researcher and now I'm also the web editor. So if you visit Time for Change's website, you'll see my work. And I live on Roseneath Peninsula, so that's just a little bit to put me into context. Just want to say a couple of things as well about Time for Change itself. So Time for Change, Argyll and Bute, is a group of passionate people who want to bring about change by speaking out about climate change, providing support and guidance to the community and to council groups, and working with local elected representatives to make the climate crisis a priority for Argyll and Bute. Time for Change seeks to raise awareness of both the threats posed by climate change and environmental degradation. This is specifically in relation to Argyll and Bute, but also the potential solutions to these problems at a local level. What I'm going to do now is get my trusty timer out, and I'm going to set this for Lots of 3 minutes, and I'm going to ask each candidate to come up to the podium and tell us a little bit about themselves. And we'll just go down in the line in order for now. So very pleased to welcome Jackie Bailey.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lucy, and thank you to all of you for attending this evening. This is the second hustings, I think, in the constituency, so it's a very welcome opportunity for us all to engage. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Jackie Bailey. I've represented this community since the inception of the Scottish Parliament, which wasn't yesterday. I am passionate about the area. It's where I call home, and it's where I raised my family. I am also the Deputy Leader of the Scottish Labour Party and our Health and Social Care spokesperson. In my past life before politics, I worked for a local authority leading on community economic development and economic and social strategy. My key role was actually to develop the capacity of the voluntary sector, regenerate communities, and provide opportunities for people from disadvantaged areas. In that role, I set up our local Citizens Advice Bureau, the Council for Voluntary Service, which is now the Third Sector Interface, and I supported social enterprises as well. So I have a particular interest in what you do. I recognise the value of the third sector, not just as a provider of services, but as the builders of capacity in our communities. And when I was first elected to Parliament, I was fortunate to be in the position to be the Minister with responsibility for the voluntary sector, amongst a range of other things. We are fortunate that there is a plethora of local organisations in Helensburgh and Lomond. We have a very active community and we have very active volunteers, and that's a great base on which to build. But what we need to look for in the future is the opportunity that comes from having the sector at the table in everything that we do. So your voice is at the heart of some of the things we'll take forward. Have steady multi-year funding, which has long been talked about but never been delivered. We need to do that. And actually, for those in the social care sector, we need to see a fundamental reform of commissioning. I'm not quite sure what time I have left, but let me just say that the cuts to local authorities and to health and social care partnerships are causing a crisis in our community. We currently follow a financing model that funds crisis, not prevention. Prevention is best delivered by the voluntary sector, working in partnership in our local communities, and unless we shift that, then we will never get out of the unsustainable spiral that we're in. So my priority for the next Parliament is that we actually bring sustainability to what we do, that we fund prevention, not crisis, and we fix, in particular, the social care sector. And on that point, I will stop. Thank you very much.
Very happy to invite Sophie Trainer to speak now.
Thanks, hopefully you can hear me okay. So I'm Sophie Trainer and I'm your SNP candidate for the Dumbarton constituency. For the last 4 years, I proudly represented Western Bartonshire as a local councillor. I currently hold the roles of the shadow spokesperson role of Housing and Communities, and I'm the deputy leader of the opposition. As a councillor, I've created real positive change within my local community, while remaining accessible and accountable to my constituents. I focus on issues including improvements to the education services. I push for investment in local infrastructure, and I've taken a proactive approach to tackling issues such as violence against women and girls and antisocial behaviour. Out with being a councillor, my previous job was in the third sector. I worked for Values into Action Scotland, and for those who aren't aware, it's a charity that works with people with learning disabilities and or autism throughout a range of different kind of aspects of kind of public life. I worked within the employability sector in Renfrew, where I basically helped individuals to get sustainable and worthwhile employment. Often they would go to the job centre and they would just be sent to a job that wasn't kind of working for them, so it was about working with employers in the area to kind of make that better for them. We worked quite closely with the council and with the government to do so. I also chair a local charity called Improving Lives, and again that works with individuals with disabilities, either physical or kind of learning disabilities, to create improvements within the local area, and we have quite a focus on self-directed support in the area. So third sector is a big priority of my own, just from my own experience in the area. My own kind of political background is about coming from a working class background. That's kind of what created my foundations of this, and it's what's kind of driven me to create change in communities like this. It's also why I'm standing for the SNP, and it's why I believe electing an SNP MSP for the first time ever would be the best thing for Dumbarton, Helensburgh, Lomond North and the Vale. The SNP are committed to improving the lives of people of Scotland and building a strong future for the next generation. We've proven ourselves as a bold and progressive government for Scotland, and I'm proud of our record of achievements that have directly impacted the lives of people. From the creation of a new social security system, including the Scottish Child Payment, to delivering over 100,000 affordable homes, to we have a record to be proud of. My campaign is one built around local issues, and that's something that I am committed to, and that's why I'm quite excited to hear your thoughts and what's important to you today. Thank you.
Hello? Can you hear at the back? Sorry, candidates.
So my name's Linda McEwen, and I'm the Scottish Trade Union and Socialist Coalition candidate. So I grew up during the Thatcherism in the Vale, where I saw the social catastrophe inflicted on my working class community through deindustrialisation. Skilled job went, and poverty and drug addiction were what replaced them, not just from Thatcher and the Tories, but also from Blairite New Labour. There's also a proud trade union and socialist tradition in the Vale, and I stand in that tradition. I stand for the building of a mass workers' party based on the trade unions. I commit, if elected as an MSP, to only taking the average wage of a skilled worker in this area. We live in an era of rampant inequality and austerity. The world's 12 richest billionaires have more wealth than the poorest half of humanity, or more than 4 billion people. In the UK, the richest 56 people have more than the poorest 27 million combined. In Scotland, the richest 1% own more wealth than the poorest 50%. These stats prove two things. One, that capitalism means the concentration of wealth into the hands of ever fewer people, and two, the money is there to end poverty, inequality and hunger at a stroke. So why is it that our community council, health and social services are at crisis levels? It's because elected politicians of all colours continually see it as their job to carry out cuts that affect every single service that working class communities rely on, from violence against women's services to community kitchens to council services to the NHS and social care. I've personally organised demonstrations in Western Banshire against violence against women and campaigned for investment in services. In answer to the question, how can we support a thriving third sector, it has to be by refusing to accept that working class communities deserve less while the rich and big business deserve more. It means fully funding every single service to deliver what is actually needed to support our society. The biggest assist we can give to the third charity sector is to end the pass-the-parcel policy of cuts passed on from Westminster to Holyrood, from Holyrood to councils and to the NHS, from councils and Holyrood to the third sector organisations, and so it goes on and on. As a socialist, we know if we take the wealth of the super rich through taxing the billionaires and democratic public ownership of the major sectors of the economy, that would free up billions to end poverty, to fully fund a council house building programme to end the housing crisis, increase wages and benefits that actually meet the cost of living. What an assist that would also be at the third sector, who are so often on the front line battling the effects of grotesque levels of cuts, poverty and inequality in our society. By drawing up a plan for what each community needs and funding that appropriately with wages and trade union rights for all who work in it, that can make a real and fundamental difference. Democratic, working class and community control and oversight of community services would also ensure delivery to the right place at the right time and with the resources needed. That's how I think we can best support the third sector. Thank you.
Right, my name's Andrew Muir. I'm an independent candidate. And the reason I'm standing this election is that Jackie won't represent my views in Parliament. All she asks is more money for the NHS. This is a third sector hustings, but nobody actually monitors the third sector. Oscar, I've dealt with Oscar loads of times, they just don't deal with complaints because I've just been banned from many organisations. I was banned from Dalmuir Barclay Church. I was banned from the carers of Western Bartonshire. I was also actually banned from this building, this room, along with my wife just sitting there for no reason whatsoever for a James Bothy meeting. Just told her bans, totally stupid. But we've got a lack of freedom of speech, and that's the problem. So we live in an oppressive area where the public sector gets bigger and bigger, the private sector gets smaller and smaller. And I'm from Dumbarton. So in Dumbarton, at one end of the high street, you've got the Sheriff Court. At the other end, you've got the NHS. And in the middle, you can have a second NHS. So that's all there. And then the high street's full of closed shops. So I'm afraid that describes Dumbarton. Now, I'm going to have to show you some. I'm a pro-life person. This appeared in one of the leaflets. This 18,000 babies killed in a year. That really annoys me. And even today, somebody got let off. They were just standing outside the hospital protesting. They were arrested and all the rest of it. Loads of money on lawyers, daft laws, but they get let off. So what's the whole point about that? And this is another, I'm anti-Labour, as you can see. Lunch hour abortions planned by Labour. So that's not very nice either. Another thing I'm against is mental health legislation. My wife got locked up and that's one of my big campaigns. It's terrible. They're forced to take drugs. All she did was visit Dumbarton Health Centre, similar to the experience of Britney Spears in America, forced to take drugs, life destroyed. Nobody talks about it. I got arrested too, bonkers. Labour Party involved, but what sort of country is this where you arrest your political opponents? I got let off lightly. Look at what happened to Alex Salmond. Dead. The Stress and Michael Jackson both coincidentally got bankrupted and died 4 years after the trial. So another thing is everyone's talking about money. But where's this money coming from? We're heading for an economic abyss. So I'm in a cup.
20 seconds.
Well, money's running out, so if we scrap the Mental Health Act and cut out these false arrests, you'd save loads of money on lawyers, and then that can all go to what you want. Okay, thank you.
Gary Mulvaney.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For those that don't know me, I'm Gary Mulvaney. I'm the Scottish Conservative candidate. My background is I'm a local councillor and have been representing Helensburgh for the last 23 years. I've worked in opposition in the council and in administration. And I suppose if you ask me what I'm most proud of, it's some of the changes that I've actually made in this community, whether it is the new academy, whether it's this very building that we're in today, even before the roof blew off, the new swimming pool, all the redevelopment work around about Helensburgh in terms of public realm. So I do believe that I've got a record of achievement in this community, and I would like to take that into the next level, which is the Scottish Parliament. My background prior to that, in a sense, is I'm a qualified accountant, and I've spent probably the last 30 odd years until I retired a couple of years ago in the motor trade, running a local Toyota dealership. And probably my proudest moment there was when we transferred the business into employee ownership a couple of years ago, one of the first motor dealer businesses in Scotland to do that, following on the back of some successes south of the border. In terms of other organisations that I'm involved in, I'm involved with the Integrated Joint Board, Health and Social Care Partnership. So Taki, your Chief Executive from the TSI, I sit on the same board as him. I also volunteer as a chair on Dumbarton Housing Association. So housing is a big passion. I think what needs to be one of the key focuses going forward for the Scottish Parliament. And I also recently took on the voluntary position of chair of SAFA, the Veterans Charity. Those that are involved in our forces, military families, SAFA is a charity that looks after their welfare, and I'm delighted and honoured to have taken on that role recently. I suppose one of the key things, if we move on to the national politics side of things, is, you know, where do we want to be in 5 years' time? I would argue strongly against a continuation of the SNP rule. You know, they claim to have a strong record, but I look at where we are. We've got lower growth than where we've been over the last 10 years. We've got 700,000 people on a waiting list, 50,000 of them waiting more than 2 years. We pay £1.8 billion more than taxes. So to me, there is a lot to be done, and the worst thing that we could have is another 5 years for John Swinney and the SNP. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is David Smith and I'm from Reform UK. A little bit about myself. I live locally with my partner and our 5 children. For a brief time we did have 6 children because we became kinship carers for one of my daughter's friends. With respect to the third party sector, I'm not going to go on too much about the party itself because we'll be here all day. Let's stick to the third party sector. With respect to the third party sector, my experience comes from my family. So my son is now 21, he's got learning difficulties. Now my son didn't always live with me. Me and his mum split up when he was 4, and he came to live with me when he was 18, when he finished his school education. And I would be a weekend dad, I'd go around and pick him up. And every time I would pick him up, his mum would be there, there'd be a complaint about something. And just look around, make sure she's not here. I would walk away from it thinking, she's a bit of a drama queen, it can't be that bad. And when he came to stay with me, we slowly went through the process of getting everything kind of transferred across, you know, to myself and my partner. And all of a sudden, it starts becoming very clear. It is, you know, the situation out there for, you know, disabled individuals is really, really bad. And, you know, maybe my ex-wife wasn't such a drama queen after all. She was, you know, very well justified in saying what she was saying. And that led me to getting in contact with my local carer centre. And that led me to sitting on the Health and Social Care Board for Western Berkshire. And again, that was another real eye-opener. Just, wow. You know, the Health and Social Care Boards have basically become a showcase for what they're going to cut next. That's all it is. Every meeting you go to, it's always cuts, cuts, cuts. And nothing seems to be getting any better. Now, Reform UK, we're all about devolving power from Holyrood down to local authorities. It's about putting power back in the control of local councils and with help from the third sector. Now, we've got our manifesto, but if you look through our manifesto, you're not going to see reams and reams and reams of information about what we're going to do with the third sector. Our approach is simply to say there's no silver bullet, there's no easy cure to any of this stuff. What we need is a government that's going to sit back and listen. Yeah, we've got 2 years, we've got one mouth, we're made that way for a reason. So our ambition, if we come into government, is to sit down and work with all our local authorities, all our third party sectors, and find something that works for everyone. And with the mind, keeping in mind that it could be different for every single area, but we want to put that power where it's needed, and that is locally, with the local authorities and with the third party sector. Thank you.
Is my mic working? Can everyone hear me okay? I've got one attached. Thanks very much to all the candidates for those introductions. Really interesting to hear from everybody, and I think because we've got so many people and so many questions, let's move directly on to our first question. So I have a question from Jill Simpson from Helensburgh Community Hub. Jill, are you here? Still here.
Hi. Do you want me to just...
I think we've got a roving microphone. Shall I turn this one off as well on the podium? Turn this one off.
Oh, wow, it's loud. I've written it down so I don't mangle it. I'm the manager of a small community-owned organisation and chair of Helensburgh and Lomond Community Planning Group. We hear a lot in the third sector about concepts like community benefit and community wealth building, economic approaches designed to better balance the benefit between the corporate world and the communities they work in. In almost 5 years at Helensburgh Community Hub, I've been approached by 2 massive corporates working locally who wanted to help us. One offered kids' pyjamas and the other bird boxes, neither of which were of any use. I spent time and effort talking to them about how they could really help us. Like many third sector organisations, what we really need most is simply money or professional level skills to support our work. One corporate I never heard from again, and the other weren't able to help. So my question is, how would you and your party ensure that community benefit works better for communities and community organisations than what it currently looks like, which is a box-ticking, lip service corporate annual report photo opportunity?
So we'll rotate answers. So as Jackie started first time, go in that direction, and I'll bring the mic back. So, Jackie, thank you.
I think it's a very interesting point that you've made regarding the kind of text box exercise. I feel like that happens quite a lot where people say they're listening but they're not actually hearing what you're saying. There is obviously occasionally sometimes where it is beneficial. There is good examples within Helensburgh of actually receiving some community benefits, but overall it's not. As part of the community welfare bill, I believe it wasn't passed, that is part of the organisation is to get that kind of moving, get that talking, get organisations sitting around together and actually listening. Part of my kind of plan, if I was successful, is about creating kind of gathering aspect of it all with third sector organisations, with local businesses in the area to create improvements going forward. So it'll be part of that kind of integral scheme, if that makes sense.
Thank you. So I think working class communities have had decades of vicious austerity from Labour, the Tories and the SNP. So I and Tusk, we've campaigned consistently for no cuts, needs budgets in Western Banshire and across Scotland. Part of the community's wealth is in its public services. Western Banshire have had to fight SNP and Labour council cuts. We campaigned with the joint trade unions and saved some services. I also have campaigned against Flamingoland and against cuts to the NHS, including the Vale Hospital. I think we need a mass investment in public services. As an MSP, I would fight with the trade unions and local community activists to build a mass campaign for the Scottish Government and councils to utilise their financial powers, of which they have many, to hold off the cuts and for funding for what our communities need. I think benefits also need to rise with the cost of living, as do wages. It's a scandal that food banks have to exist. The SNP are saying they will introduce limited caps on food prices. They and Labour aren't taking the wealth off of big business, which is the only way to solve poverty and inequality.
Well, most of my answers are going to be about human rights rather than money. And again, it just goes back, you've got to get rid of the things that are wasting money, like the ferries, that cost millions. I now heard of Berlin jail, it's costing a lot of money as well. And all I'm saying is you've had, again from Dumbarton, you've had the Labour and the SNP, they've been in charge for 25 years, and that's what you get for your high street. So what's the point of voting for them?
Jill, thanks very much for your question. I do know the community hub that you referred to. You said 2 things that caught my ears. One was money and one was skills. And I think in terms of money, one of the things that we should be doing is we should be looking at multi-year settlements for every aspect of the public authority. So not just councils or health and social care partnerships, but organisations that are involved in terms of the third sector. Third sector organisations have been massively affected by what we've seen in other sectors, the cost of living. We've seen charities close down. We've seen volunteering diminish. We've lost probably 200,000 volunteers over the last 4 or 5 years because people don't have the time to do that, they're potentially doing 1 or 2 jobs because of the cost of living. So I think if we can resolve some of those things in terms of the cost of living, we can then get people freed up in terms of time to give you the skills that you need. So it is money and skills, and obviously it's a complicated solution, and I'm out of time.
Hello. Thank you. That's a really, really good question. And what would we do? The first thing I'd like to acknowledge is the same as what everyone else has said. Right now, everyone's very cash poor, everyone's very time poor, everyone's working as hard as they can just to pay the bills. In terms of what reform would do is that there's a larger plan out there to, again, decentralise, control and provide more money to councils, essentially allowing councils to raise more money themselves and keep the money that they've raised, so it's not going to be taken off them by the Scottish Government. In terms of sorry, I forgot what I was going to say then. Yeah, it is basically decentralising what's going to the Scottish Government, keeping it local and allowing local authorities to then take control of the money and spend that money where it's needed the most.
Thank you very much for the question, Jill. Lots of corporates say they do social responsibility because it looks good in their annual report, but it is a tick box exercise, and actually communities themselves are the ones that know best what they actually need. So spending some time talking to communities and understanding their needs has to be the very first thing. I'm very conscious that community benefit means different things to different people. We need clear definitions and clear principles and understanding, so you don't get into the same position of, do you want pyjamas or bird boxes? They've actually spoken to you first. One thing I would also do is the community right to buy or asset transfer. 95% of transfers actually happened before the 2016 Act. So we need to review the Act because I think it's currently a blockage to community asset transfer, and I would like to see more in the hands of local communities than is currently the case.
So just pause that. Thank you very much for those answers. Jill, would you like to respond and feedback?
No, I'll be diplomatic and say no.
Okay, that's fine. So our second questioner is Julia Russell from Helensburgh Amateur Swimming Club. Is Julia here?
I am here, but I've actually forgotten what was going to say. But it is around. I am the president of our local swimming pool, and we don't have a swimming pool at the moment because you may have heard over a year and a half ago now, the roof blew off, and the council are busy trying to sort that out for us. So, thank you very much. So I sort of really wanted to know what your intent was in terms of supporting the development of sports and sporting facilities for young children in Helensburgh and the surrounding area, and how have you recently demonstrated that, please?
That question. Start against
Thanks very much for your question. So currently you have ALIOs that are run the leisure services in Western Bartonshire and Argyll and Bute. So they're not democratic and they're not well funded. We need to bring them back in-house and run the services with publicly accountable elected bodies. We need more leisure facilities and services, more public investment, not cuts. We're living in a society where young people have never known anything other than social media and the internet, and I think we really need to encourage them back into taking an interest in sport for both their mental health and their physical health, and I just think we can't do that if we don't have excellent, fully funded leisure facilities in the community.
Well, from Dumbarton we've got a swimming pool, so we're okay, I'm afraid, but I just noticed when I was walking the swimming pool here, it seems to have moved from its previous space, and now there's a big gap. I don't know if that's for a supermarket, but it just reminds me of all the gaps in Dumbarton. But I'm a Scottish chess champion. I'd like money to be put in chess. We're off to Uzbekistan this year, so if you want to sponsor them, that we've got a less intellectual government nowadays, so go for that instead.
Okay, thanks, Julie, for your question. And I do sympathise with the position of the swimming club in terms of no date in terms of when the new swimming pool will actually open. As I say, I'm very proud that we've actually got a new leisure centre, and obviously there are sort of complex issues round about who's to blame, whether it's the constructors or whether it's the designers in terms of the roof issue. And I would like to hope that we get a date pretty soon as to when it's going to reopen. I'm quite frustrated that we can't seem to get a date. In terms of the wider point round about sports and investment, absolutely fundamental. When I was in business, we made a point of sponsoring local organisations, boys football, girls football, netball, anything that was children based to get outdoor and get active, because the issue of iPads and TVs and social media is something that we need to counter, and we need to give as much support to parents to help to do that.
Thank you, it's a brilliant question. A year and a half is just ridiculous considering it was just built. It's not like they've lost the plans or anything like that. If I was elected, I'd immediately be going cap in hand saying, right, we need some emergency funding to get this sorted ASAP, because clearly nothing else has worked so far. In terms of locally, I understand that some of the classes are happening over at the Vale. There's also the Bute swimming pool. My daughter, she actually learned to swim in Camden House because we couldn't get lessons anywhere else. And it is vitally important. Swimming is a life skill. My kids were having lessons there shortly before the roof blew away. I think they stopped of their own accord just before that happened, but it is a vital service. There's a pool there at Faz Lane as well, which is a really, really good pool. There's pools all around us. It's just getting access is really difficult, and there should be an excuse for waiting a year and a half for a new roof.
Thank you, Julia. I did in fact try to help the Helensburgh Swimming Club, and we managed, I think you managed for a while, to have shared facilities at the Vale of Leven swimming pool, largely because the Vale of Leven Swimming Club gave you space, but then that became difficult. So I would like to see more cooperation between local authorities and indeed the private sector and any facilities that exist in the area that allow the clubs to flourish. And clearly what's happened to Helensburgh Swimming Pool and the length of time it's taken to repair it is really shocking. I do recall, I'm old enough to remember the Community Council warning about putting it there because of flooding and because of exposure, but there you go. It's always good to be wise in hindsight. In terms of wider participation, there's lots of things going on locally, whether it's the rugby club, the sailing club. We've got world-class sports people, the tennis club indeed, world-class sports people that come from this area that use those facilities. So I would like to see more done in schools, more done to encourage those voluntary groups, and actually let's use the talent we have to encourage the next generation into sports.
So I'm a partner director on the Western Bartonshire Leisure Trust. Sorry, I think I can just about see you there. So priorities of children having access, not just children actually, anybody having access to sports and physical facilities in the area is of high priority to me. Part of the SNP's manifesto is about a summer of sport, which has been backed by £40 million of investment. This is linked into the Commonwealth Games and also the kind of World Cup that's going on. So there's multitudes of different sports that are happening, and within that, part of that is about the free swimming lessons for children of primary school age throughout the summer as well, just to give one example of that.
Thank you very much for those answers, everybody. And Julia, would you like to respond to that?
Just to say that, let's get the mic to you. Just to say that during this past year and a half, thank you very much, Jackie, for the letters that you wrote to the council and to encourage them on to accept some sort of accountability for where they are in the repairs of that building. and reform candidate, yes, you quite rightly say that swimming, for example, is a life skill, and Argyll and Bute has got the largest coastline in Scotland, and so swimming is even more important to us. You know, you have all of those children living along those coastlines, and they need the function of a swimming pool, you know, to learn how to swim. We have exhausted the opportunities for the swimming club to train in other places. We did approach Faz Lane. The pool is shut. The Vale is absolutely packed, and a very old swimming pool, and supports an ever increasing area for people and their swimming needs. So I think the whole situation regarding swimming in particular needs to be looked at. I know it's an expensive support, but it is a life skill. It keeps the weight down. It keeps us out of the doctors. It's good for your mental health. So please focus on this when you're putting your manifestos together and support the swimming community. Thank you very much.
Sorry. That might have been me putting this one on. Are we okay? Sound? I have a question from Raymond Mack. Is Raymond here? No? I'll ask this question on behalf of Raymond then. Raymond asks, do you condemn Israel?
Yeah, I condemn Israel, yeah. I'm against nuclear weapons, I'm a Christian, I'm against war, and I just don't want to see any part of it. So yeah, and all the horrible human rights in Palestine as well, and Iran, and I condemn Iran as well. So yeah, war's terrible. Yeah.
Indeed, war is terrible, but I would start by condemning Iran and its state-sponsored terrorism of Hamas and Hezbollah. They are causing real issues in the region, and Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, and I support democracies, so I'm sorry, I don't condemn Israel, especially as I'm not entirely sure what we're supposed to condemn them for. Clearly we've got a bit of a mess now, and I think that the key will be how do we resolve this? This is a mess created by the US administration. They will have to find a way out of it, but to be honest with you, Iran is a problem that's been there for 50 years. We cannot have a nuclear-armed Iranian state. So we either deal with it just now, or our children in the future will have to deal with a more serious problem. So you know, it's a difficult one to solve, and I'm not entirely sure the solution. I would have thought the brains of the US military would have actually got a better plan than where we've ended up.
Thank you, that's a great question. I'm not going to give you, I don't think I'm going to give you a great answer. My answer to this is to say that when it comes to wars, conflicts in particular, it's a Westminster issue. It's not an issue for Holyrood. This is a Holyrood campaign. Our focus is on the Scotland Act and what Holyrood is actually meant to do, and what the Reform UK Scottish Government would do is to park these issues to one side, leave it to Westminster. That's their remit, that's their control. What we're going to focus on is NHS, education, law and justice, etc., etc. Everything within the Scotland Act, and when it comes to these kind of issues, we're going to take a step back and not get involved.
I think, certainly for me, I find this time of global uncertainty really troubling. You know, we see it on our nightly news, we think it's happening somewhere else, it has no impact on us, but actually it does. You know, and so for me, I want to start by condemning the Hamas attacks on innocent Israelis. I then want to say that the scale of the response from Israel is entirely unacceptable, and I think personally that there's been genocide in Palestine, and we need to do all we can to rebuild Palestine. I used to believe in a two-state solution. I still do, because I'm hopeful, but the reality is I think that is a long, long time in the offing. In terms of Iran, I have no sympathy for the regime in Iran and what they've done to their own people, but I equally do not believe that the war started by Trump and Netanyahu, I always get the name wrong, but I think that war, frankly, is illegal. And the consequences of it, we are feeling today. And I just think the world is consequently a more uncertain place.
As a short answer, yes, I condemn this Israel government's actions based on international law and human rights issue. And whilst you're right, it's not a Scottish Parliament issue, but it's a humanitarian issue, and it's impacting every single one of us. Therefore, we should all be caring about it, especially if you become an MSP.
So Tusk has built the anti-war movement. We support mass action by workers and youth against the war. Endless horror in the Middle East rooted in capitalism and imperialism. But only socialist struggle can win Palestinian liberation and drive out the likes of Netanyahu and the reactionary Iranian regime. We actively support independent working class struggles in Israel and Iran and what I call for a socialist federation in the region. Let's be clear, none of the other parties here can say those things. Trump isn't listening to Starmer in the Middle East. Neither Labour or the SNP have mobilised to stop US imperialism using bases in Scotland for its wars. We stand in solidarity with working class people fighting the cost of living crisis, oppression and war, be they Palestinian, American, Iranian or here.
Thank you very much, candidates. The next question I have is from Claire Muir. Is Claire here?
Yes.
Would you like to ask your question?
I put a question in. Do I have to say what's on there? Because I can't. Or can I just ask anything?
So that's your question.
Lucy, I think the question is behind.
Oh, sorry.
No, or was it Lucy in the front? Beg your pardon.
Do you want to do it for me?
I'll ask the question for you. Yes, that's fine. So the question that Claire asks the candidates is, what are you doing about the fact that psychiatric wards have become lawless hellholes?
I suppose I can say that I've never actually been in a psychiatric ward, so I don't recognise that description of that division of healthcare, and I don't recognise that description of the NHS. I think our staff in the NHS do a brilliant job. They have got a challenging situation. They're in a time of resource challenge as well, so I'm afraid I don't recognise the proposition of the question.
So it's just a denial?
I don't recognise what you're saying, I don't agree with what you're saying.
Can we allow the candidates to answer and to say what they like to say, and then, sorry, I'll put my mic on, and I'll say this with my mic on. If the questioners and the members of the audience can allow the candidates to answer without interruption, and then I'll come back to the questioner after all the candidates have spoken and ask you if you'd like to respond. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you. It is a good question. There's your own story, which I've read about. There was also the programme on the BBC, I think it was a panorama programme about the Children's Healthcare Board in Glasgow. It is really confusing. I don't think it gets enough attention. I think a lot of it is to do with funding, lack of staff, services being stretched. I don't think people are evil. Yeah, human rights are an issue. I haven't got a great answer for you. I'm sorry, it's not something that I can sit here and freestyle. All I can say is that, yeah, we're aware, and if there's an opportunity there, we'll look into it.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the question, Claire. I wouldn't describe psychiatric wards in the way that you have done. But I do believe that more provision needs to happen, particularly for mental health, in the community. We currently, in this area, don't really have access to crisis services after 8 o'clock at night. Mental health provision is patchy. The service has a long waiting list for people, and particularly when you're dealing with children and adolescent mental health services, the waiting list for any kind of diagnosis is far, far too long. So we do need investment in it. We would certainly, again, back to my theme of we would fund prevention rather than crisis, because if you can deal with mild to moderate mental health challenges in the community, then that is better. We would also create a national emergency mental health service, so that instead of ending up having to phone 999, having a police escort to A&E and the police sitting there all the time, we would have a specific service that involves trained paramedics, mental health professionals, that would provide that to people, freeing up the police so that they can be on our streets.
I recognise this is an important issue for yourself. I have also seen your leaflet, but I do echo the statements of my other candidates where it's not a description that I would recognise from all families' experience and from people's I know's experience in that situation. The NHS the staff in the NHS is working very hard under circumstances where there is a lot of people needing that support at this time. As an MSP, I would like to see, and I would be pushing for more investment within the various different services.
Excuse me. I don't know your full story, but I feel really sorry for you that that's been your experience. We are living in a period where mental health is at crisis point, from the cost of living crisis, from all the different social problems that we face. And I think that, the NHS was a massive win for working class people, and it is something that we should always, champion, but understand that cuts to services make it difficult. They're working under massive pressure, and I know that there is a lot of people that I've spoke with, and I've had experience of it myself, that have a lot of criticisms of CAMS, particularly in the area. So I think what needs to happen is massive funding needs to be. Sorry.
It's not money; it's human rights.
Yeah, but you can't deal with people's human rights if you don't have the money to fund the services. So we need massive investment in the NHS in order for those services to be made available.
Well, that's my wife that's asking the question, but these other people don't really understand it. There's some basic facts. If you're arrested, you've got to, in theory, doing a crime. For mental health, there's no trial. That's bizarre, there's no trial. You just told you're in. That's totally unjust. They haven't mentioned that. The second thing is, you can be detained for no reason. You've no mental illness as well, because it's so vague. So those are two vital things when you think about it. That's what's totally wrong with the experience. The third thing is, why have the United Nations banned it? You've just all written that off. And it's not really about money at all. If you think about the witchcraft, which I equate this in, if you've got a nasty person locking you up, that wasn't about money. I know we want more money, that's a totally different issue. And you get beaten up as well. So I know this was 20 years ago, I know it's happened to other people locked in for 10 years. I think it should be scrapped totally. Nobody ever should be locked up who hasn't committed a crime. But these people, I'm afraid, just don't understand.
Would you like to respond to the answers that you've heard?
Basically, forced treatment is torture, and that's not me saying that, that's the UN and the WHO. It's the law that's wrong. Jackie, can I ask you a yes or no question? Did you read the Mental Health Act before you passed the legislation?
Yes.
So you're aware that it violates each and every human right, which is against the Scotland Act?
It doesn't. It passed through Parliament. It was given...
Name one human right a sectioned person has.
I think everybody in Parliament agreed to it. It was unanimous.
Can people...
Can the person in the audience shut up? They're not the chair.
One at a time, please.
Go on, Jack.
Jackie, would you like to respond?
So you just told an audience member to shut up. Okay, that's an interesting approach. Certainly, as far as I'm concerned, the entirety of the Parliament supported the Mental Health Act because it was about modernising mental health laws in Scotland, but actually the issue is not just the law, is about how we support people with mental health from the very earliest stage into adulthood. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the questioner and thank you very much to the candidates for your answers. Our next question is from Andrew Anderson and it's a question for Time for Change Argyll and Bute.
So we've been talking about the NHS. I got a full knee replacement on Friday and I have to say that I've got absolutely excellent hair. So Time for Change, as well as trying to raise awareness about climate change and helping people think about mitigations and adaptations, we've also got a strong sense of just transition and social justice. So the concentration of land ownership is well known, with half of all privately owned land in Scotland belonging to 433 people. Here in Argyll, Lassie Estates have owned a lot of Helensburgh and Lomond since 1138, and we also have large holdings that belong to the MOD. So in this part of Argyll, which straddles the west of Scotland and the Highlands and Islands, where there's so we're in this really weird place in Helensburgh, between these two places. But currently there's increasing political support for market-driven carbon credits, and it's leading to private finance acquiring large swathes of land across all of Scotland. How does your party plan to avoid the injustices of the past, delivering land reform, while also storing carbon, restoring biodiversity, and increasingly, what's going on just now, ensuring food security for the nation?
Thank you. So our party stands on the platform of saying that we're against net zero. That is not to say that we're not environmentalists. Okay, we believe strongly in the countryside. We believe in strongly supporting our rural businesses, our farmers, our fisheries. We've got quite a good section in our manifesto about farming and fisheries. In terms of land ownership, there's nothing there there's nothing within our manifesto that says we're going to change anything with respect to that. What we want to see is we want to see farmers farming, we want to see fishermen fishing, we want to see the countryside being used for the enjoyment of everyone. And again, I was speaking to a gentleman a few weeks ago that was talking about forestries and tree planting. That is something we fully support. So despite our stance against net zero, we are strongly in favour of the environment and the countryside.
Thank you. I'm not sure the people of Rue would necessarily agree with you about more forestry, but that's a whole other debate for another time. Andrew's absolutely right. 430 people, I understand, own half the land of Scotland. And actually, community transfers and community asset transfers, which I support fundamentally, 95% of them happened before the 2016 Act, which was supposed to make it simpler. So the first thing we need to review is that 2016 Act to make it easier for land transfers to happen, for assets to come across to communities, and for us to change the structure. Now, land reform is in the DNA of the Scottish Labour Party. In fact, the Labour Party was formed in partnership with the Crofters Party, something I didn't know until I was researching for this evening's meeting. But there is currently inequality in land management patterns. We need to do something about that. We would do something about making asset transfer easier. But my disappointment is that climate change targets, which the Parliament across the board agreed, have subsequently been abandoned. And I think that is the key issue for the next generation and for this next Parliament about what we do to get back on track. Thank you.
So progress was made in the last parliamentary term regarding kind of land reform acts and the Crossing Act, but I think we're all very much aware that there's much further to go on this situation. I'm very much supportive of community ownership of them rather than of a lot of land rather than just being big businesses in the area, because you know local people have the best interest of their areas at heart. I think there should probably be a kind of bigger push around kind of allotments and community gardens in a lot of areas as well, regarding the kind of food scarcity that you were speaking about, and we can kind of increase that going forward. And again, it's kind of about working with organisations like yourselves and many others in the area to create a plan that actually makes sense for each of the individual areas going forward.
Approximately 1,200 landowners, some of the wealthiest people in society, hold 2/3 of Scotland's land. Roughly 57% of rural land is privately owned. Working class and poor have always fought to bring land into common public ownership, and that struggle continues. I think we need a socialist planned economy, including a mass council house building programme based on the majority of people's needs. We need the land in the public hands for that to happen. And I also campaigned alongside many other people to stop the land capture at Balloch by Flamingo Land, which I think was really, really important to keep that piece of land free from all of that, what that would entail for the public to use. I'm also a housing association tenant, and every year they put the rent up. There aren't enough affordable houses. We need mass council house building and rent controls, and we could do that while protecting our local area's natural beauty. But the rich and landlords hold massive power in capitalist society, and that's why I fight ultimately for socialism.
So this is a mixture of a question on climate change and land. I think we've got quite the highest ever population of Scotland. I think it's 5.5 million, I'm not sure. So that obviously means less land. I would maybe do some control on people having second homes. I don't like that, people having second homes. Surely they should pay a bit more tax to discourage it. So that'd be one thing I would do. We also need to build more houses. Lots of people have asked me questions about that. So we're talking about tens of thousands of houses need to be built. As for the climate, yeah, we need to reduce dependence on hydrocarbons, but I think we need to keep going with the North Sea at the moment because of the wars and things. We need to have control of our own. So it's a few ideas.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. You mentioned a couple of things in terms of carbon credits. I understand that as a UK reserved issue, not a devolved issue. But you did mention food security, and that to me is a very key one at the moment when we're looking at a cost of living crisis. And unfortunately, one of the first things that the Labour government did down south was on inheritance tax for farmers. So to me, we need to support the farming community. We need to incentivise them to grow crops on it. I do remember years and years ago when we were in Europe, you know, we had set-aside schemes that effectively allowed land not to be used. The other thing I would suggest is energy security is a key thing. It makes no sense to me to import oil and gas from Qatar in the Middle East when we've got gas and oil reserves in the North Sea. So I think in terms of a managed transition, we should use that as well. And I think the other key point around about energy efficiency is housing. You know, as a chair of a housing association, there's been no additional budget from the SNP in terms of retrofitting energy efficiency measures to houses, and that's badly, badly needed.
Thank you. Very strict with you. Angela, would you like to respond to the comments by the candidates?
Yeah, I'll stay sitting down. Thank you. Yeah, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding on how all this is very complexly woven together. So there's a lot of land going over to corporate investment companies that's then being used to offset carbon rather than going into effort going into reducing the amount of carbon that people are using. So it's like burn as much as we can because we can plant a few trees here. And if you come back to the food security, if you come back to people that are working the land, then that's in jeopardy. There's lots of land just now in Scotland which used to be productive, which hasn't been productive agriculturally for a long time, if you look across the world, if you look across Britain, if you look across Scotland, Argyll might be one of the places where we actually become a prime grower. We're unlikely to run out of water. And we've got access to seas, and there's just lots of land, I think, that's been given over to sick spruce. 20 years later, it's completely poisoned, it's useless for nothing, and all it's done is allowed somebody to run a big business somewhere else, burning up oil. And I think we all need to have a really long, hard, complicated look at how all of this interviews with itself.
Thanks very much for that question. I've got a question from Lindsay Young. Lindsay, would you like to ask your question?
Hi. Yeah, I don't think I actually structured a proper question today, Lucy, but however, having listened to all of this, I was going to touch on active transport, and I'll still go there, but first of all, I'd like to hear all your thoughts on renewables, because there's a horrible amount of chat of fossil fuels there. I'd like to know if you've done, oh, sorry, this isn't working very well, if any of you've done carbon, okay. Okay, maybe I'll just talk in my normal voice, which usually gets across fairly well. I'd like to know individually if you've done carbon literacy training and if you actually know about the climate crisis, because anyone who is in power nowadays really needs to know what they're talking about there. That is really important. I'm in schools just now teaching it to P7, so they're going to be more informed than quite a few of you are very quickly, okay? However, back to active travel. So I moved down from Glasgow 10 years ago, where I could cycle everywhere with my very small children at the time. We were very excited because there was going to be a Helensburgh to Dumbarton cycle path, and it was going to be finished really soon. Yeah, so little did we know that project started in 2000 and is still not completed. There is a disconnect between money coming for year-to-year funded programmes from Transport Scotland, in that it takes about 6 months for that money to be released. Then people on the ground have 6 months to use it before they have to start putting in funding forms again for the next year. These projects would be done in half the time with half the money spent if more careful consideration was put towards them. Jackie probably doesn't need to answer this question because she's been very actively supportive of the Psychopath Action Group for trying to get this forward, but I'd really like to hear the answers to the other bits and bobs from you all. Sorry if you can all retain them because of what we've done there.
I think we'll ask everybody to answer, so thank you very much. So yes, so Jackie, so there are two parts of that question, which are both important. One is about active travel and the other is about carbon literacy training, so perhaps
renewables, stance on renewables.
Perhaps candidates would like to address.
Yes, I'm in favour of renewables. I'll keep this brief. I'm in favour of renewables. I like wind power, solar power. The more sun, the better. But actually, I think there were some very interesting wave power projects that Scottish companies were running off the coast of Portugal. And given the waves that we have, one wonders why we aren't doing more of them. I've met some of your P7s. I have done carbon literacy training. They are very smart, switched on young people, so more power to your elbow. And can I say it takes a shorter time to put a man on the moon or a woman on the moon than it does to complete the Helensburgh Cardress Dumbarton cycle path. I recall it was Sarah Boyack, who was the Minister for Transport back in 2000, who granted money for the project. I was very excited about it because it was in my patch, and Argyll and Bute Council then decided to delay. We had consultants who were running the cycle path by the railway, then it was up by the A814. The reality is, it's finally looking as if it's on track, but the money is now not necessarily there.
I'll try and be brief because that's quite a big question. I believe that Scotland's energy future lies in clean and affordable and secure power. And my party are committed to that as part of their manifesto. Is about expansion, some of that as well. Regarding active travel, I think this is something we should all be trying to do. I grew up in a household where we didn't have a car, so buses, for me, cycling, bikes, trains were all a big part, and I think that since I've learned to drive, I have probably done less of that than I should. It's something I'm quite trying to get back into the habit of doing. Regarding your electricity, I haven't done it, but I'm very intrigued and I'm going to have to go and have a look at this now.
Thank you. I think we need to bring the entire energy industry into public ownership to really deal with the climate crisis. The biggest polluters are big business. A socialist planned economy would mean massive investment into renewable energy, including job creation. The natural resources are there, but they need to be brought under the control of the working class. Ultimately, we need a socialist world, as capitalism is incapable of solving the climate catastrophe. I supported school students walking out and protesting against climate change, and I agree with Jackie, the young people are really, really switched on, and I think it's marvellous. I think as well, like on transport, I think again we need to bring the whole public transport system into public ownership, the bus network and the rail as well. Obviously the ScotRail is under state run at the moment, but it needs to be run, I think, by workers themselves, the passengers and the communities. So we stand for real socialist public ownership. And I think in cycling, you know, I used to cycle quite regularly when I was younger until I unfortunately came down with ME. But I did use the cycle path regularly, and I understand how difficult it is, you know, when it's not completely finished. So we would obviously support that to be finished properly.
Jackie talked about the man in the moon. Well, why haven't he been for 50 years? Part of me thinks it was just a Hollywood film set, but we never know until we go back. Yeah, cycling's a good thing. They should have a path. But again, all the money goes to lawyers. It's the same with anything. All these corrupt things drain the money from all the nice things in life. I haven't done any carbon literacies. Having been old enough, I can see the climate's changed in my lifetime. So I don't need education on it. But we do need to do something that's very serious, you know.
To answer your questions, I haven't done the full carbon literacy training. In terms of renewables, I'm very much in favour of renewables, but I do think it needs to be balanced at the moment in terms of a transition with oil and gas. And indeed, I would be very supportive of new nuclear power here in Scotland. I don't know why the SNP are obsessive against it. It would bring jobs to areas of Scotland, so I'm very supportive of that. In terms of active transport, yeah, the cycle path's been on the go for 20 odd years, and Jackie was right, it was a Labour initiative. Unfortunately, it was an uncosted plan and there was no budget behind it, or insufficient budget to actually deliver where we've got to. We've now got into a situation where, as the questioner says, every 6 months we've got to, council have got to reapply to Sustrans to get more budget, and then we've got to then see where we are. As local councillors, we get updates 4 or 5 times a year, and it's a key issue for us. But without budget and long-term planning, how are you supposed to construct anything? A basic thing.
So there was a budget in 2000.
Insufficient, Jackie.
No,
you know.
there was a budget, you never came up with the plan. Sorry.
Okay, so that's a good question. The answer to the first part of it, have I received carbon training? No, I've not. What I am is, I am an electrical engineer, and I've got a big house with lots of kids, and all of you can do this when you go home. When you look at your incoming fuse, it'll say 100 amps in it. All right, it's not going to have the fuse carrier should have 100 amps fuse inside. But sometimes if you're a smaller property, it might be 80. If you think about running a household purely on electricity, you know, I've got a car, my partner's got a car, my son's got a car, my daughter now wants a car. If we have a heat pump, electric showers, electric ovens, etc., etc., etc. To go fully electric and to have this wonderful wind-powered utopia, you'd have to rewire every single house in Scotland. You'd have to insulate every single house in Scotland, which will cost a phenomenal amount of money. It's going to take years and years and years to get to where you want to get to. We're running at it just now, and we're going to bankrupt ourselves. Our position is that we need to rein it back a bit. We need nuclear power. We still need oil and gas, and it's going to take decades to get to where you want to get to.
Would you like to respond to the comments that the candidates have made?
Okay, I'll try.
Let's try the mic again. Okay. I am in a 5-bedroom house with 3 children, and we have an air source heat pump and electric car, and I haven't had to have it rewired. When you say that in a public position, you do down renewables, which we need to get to. There's no going back. The fossil fuel industry is dead. We have to transition away, and we have to do it really, really fast because we are running out of time. I'm not scaremongering. That's not kind of my nature. That's not what I do. That is the facts of the matter. If you're in a public position, you can't say what you've just said. Okay. I'll probably just leave it at that because, yeah.
Thank you, Lindsay, and thank you, candidates, for those answers. I have a question from Kevin Johnston. Is Kevin here?
Yeah.
Would you like to?
The question I'd like to ask you is, what would you do with the current crisis we have with cost of living, and what would your parties do to help with that, and also what would you do to try and prevent it in the future?
That's obviously quite a big question in terms of the topic that you've raised. The SNP are very committed to doing what we can within our own remit to tackle the cost of living. Our manifesto has a number of items, and we've already introduced them as part of our government, from capping bus fares at £2 to help people be able to access that more fairly, to the price cap that we're trying to introduce for kind of food items. These are obviously just some of the many ways that we are trying to deal with that. I suppose the other aspect's a bit more global, so I suppose it's about how we play our part in that as a country, hopefully as an independent country, kind of going forward.
Yeah, so as a socialist, we believe that it's the big business needs to be taken into public ownership. We've got supermarkets, we've got gas and electricity companies, fuel companies, all making eye-watering profits while the rest of us are having to suffer. Increased food prices, fuel prices at the pumps, rent increases, all of that. So we believe that they should be taken into public ownership, and that the profits should be used to keep our bills low. It's quite simple, really. You can't control what you don't own.
I think Scotland needs to copy the countries that are doing really well. Like, there's no cost of living crisis in Switzerland or Norway, Finland, I don't think. So we need a really good high work ethic, boost the economy, and just get people that want to work. I'm still working at 67. I have no intention of stopping. You just need to get people like me, make that the norm. And that'll just boost up for everyone, and everyone rises up.
Kevin, it's a really good question with a lot of answers. I mean, in terms of our manifesto commitments, we've said that what we fundamentally need to do is grow the economy, because unless you grow the economy, then you can't create the wealth to then tax and to then put into public services. One of the things, so growing the economy is fundamental. We then need to look at taxation, and we've got a fully costed manifesto. We've committed to reduce personal taxation. Business taxation, business rates in today's climate with online retail are fundamentally unfair. We need to do something about that. Energy security, unless you control the energy under your own control, then you are subject to the global markets and to the price shocks that we've seen. I mean, I'm very proud that we brought in the likes of the energy price cap 3 or 4 years ago, and that has helped manage some of the pain that people have been experiencing. And one of the things, maybe an elephant in the room, is we need to get more people economically active in Scotland. We've got a welfare bill that's going to triple by 2030 to £9 billion. Unsustainable. That will be all your taxes to pay for it. So we need to get a grip on that, and pretty quickly.
Thank you. That's another great question. What we want to do is lower taxes. So we want to align the Scottish bands with the bands of the rest of the UK, and then lower tax by a penny. And what we aim to do with that is to stimulate the economy, get people working, get the builders building, etc., etc., etc. With respect to food security, we want to support our farmers and get our farmers growing again. And that is broadly how we are going to tackle the cost of living. In summary, I agree with a lot of what's been said on the panel already, so I'm not going to repeat it, but the major thing that we're going to do is reduce taxes and put an end to the kind of cliff edges where people earn up to a certain limit and they don't want to earn any more, do those kind of extra hours because it pushes them into the next band. We need to kind of move ourselves away from that to get everyone working and really stimulate the economy and build a recovery that way.
Thank you very much. The current cost of living crisis is having an effect on people across the board, not just people who are out of work, but people who are in work as well. And I know many families where they cannot, if it's a 5-week month, they cannot cope with that 5th week, and so they end up at food banks. I was at the food bank AGM last night. The work that they do is absolutely sterling, but the numbers are increasing and donations are falling simply because nobody's got much anymore. So we need to be very conscious of that. We would use the convening power of government to get the supermarkets together. Nesta have run a programme with supermarkets that shows you can do loss leaders on basic foods that the supermarkets like to do on the more luxury end and on the less healthy foods, so we can get that done. We would institute a national warm homes programme that's about fitting out homes, in maximise the impact of the warm homes discount. And I know, and you know, certainly my fuel went up from 126 pence per litre to 155, it's probably higher now per litre. That's not coming down. We would bulk purchase fuel. And sorry, I had more to say. You can ask me after.
Thank you. I've only got time for one more question, and for this question I'm going to ask candidates to keep to 30 seconds so that we actually work to time. Sorry, that's because that's near that.
Should we take that from?
Is Graham McCormack here? And would Graham like to ask this question?
Thanks very much. The most basic of human rights is actually energy. We can't do anything without energy. So I'm going to ask you whether your parties will actually look at the possibility of energy being free at the point of use for all households. Because we have 34% of all households in Scotland suffering from fuel poverty. So that's basically the question. And the cost of it, if necessary, can come from general taxation.
I mean, I would say yes. Yes. I mean, I've told you that I think we should take the big energy companies into public ownership. The CEOs of these companies are making billions of pounds, and that's despicable when people are suffering. So yes, we would say yeah.
Oh yeah, I would agree with taxing the energy companies more, but I don't think we can afford this to just be to put taxes up high enough as it is. And sorry about that.
Hi Graham, the simple answer is no. It's not free. Somebody's paying for it along the line, so if you're not paying for it at the point of consumption, you're paying through greater taxes, and I don't think that's a way to go.
I would say no as well. I'm just going to agree with the gentleman on my right-hand side.
30 seconds is a tall order. I would increase renewables. I think we need better community benefit. We can reduce costs. I don't think you can make it free. And the SNP, of course, are against the energy profit levy, and Bute are currently making eye-watering profits. So, really interesting question, but no is the answer.
They'll be unsurprised with my answer here, but I think that more can be done under Independent Scotland, which is what we will need to do as we go forward. But as I said, I very much believe in renewable energy. I think we should be doing a lot more of that going forward and have that being the kind of root cause of how we help lower electricity prices.
Thank you very much, candidates. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. No. Well, you'll have to be very quick. I'll give you 30 seconds as well.
The Energy Saving Trust estimates that household energy costs in Scotland is £4.6 billion. If you look at the Scottish Government's budget for the forthcoming year, there is £4.9 billion set aside for unspecific climate interventions. So the money is actually already there from the taxes that we pay. And I'm only asking you to actually look at these things rationally rather than just assume that we can't pay it, we can't afford it when we can.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you particularly to the questions. We've had a great range of questions here. I'll try and reposition. Thank you very much to the candidates. It's very challenging, I know, to have so little time to answer these complicated questions. So can we give our candidates a round of applause? I just want it safer. So everybody, thank you very much for coming and do have a safe journey home.